In this video, we are going to rank all the main villains of the Monsterverse, and now that Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire has been released, I have to tell you that Skar King is not even in the top 3 of villains. Are you surprised? So come with me until the end of this video and you will understand why Skar King is one of the weakest villains of the Monsterverse. Welcome to Nerds Insights, your channel for daily nerd news. Before we start ranking the top 6 greatest villains of the Monsterverse, I have to explain the criteria I used to place each one in their position. The main criterion was the level of threat they posed to the Monsterverse, how difficult it was for Godzilla or Kong to defeat them, and their feats. I am not considering the potential or what each kaiju could have done, has done, or is capable of doing. It's only what we have actually seen them do on screen, okay? So before starting this list, which I know will spark discussion, leave a like on this video and comment, what is your favorite Monsterverse villain? 6. Skullcrawler. When I talk about the Skullcrawlers, I'm referring to the main one from the final fight against Kong. It posed a huge threat to him in the Hollow Earth, being the most fearsome and ferocious of them all and the one that Kong had to work the hardest to face. However, Kong didn't have much difficulty defeating it. What really complicated Kong's life was that there were humans there whom he wanted to protect, and the Skullcrawler used them to help break Kong's defense and attack him. But if there were no humans there and it was just Kong against the Skullcrawler, Kong would have won even more easily than he did. So the Skullcrawler is in our top 6 monsters of the Monsterverse. 5. Skar King. Well folks, in 5th place is Skar King, who really disappointed me a lot. I thought Skar King would be a tyrant, totally insane, evil, extremely strong, and would create a new empire. He would change the power hierarchy of the Monsterverse, but that's not what we saw in the movie. We saw that he was a very skilled primate, very agile but not that strong. In fact, in the first blow he took from Kong, he cried out for help from Shimo, and throughout the final battle, he couldn't exchange blows with any of the protagonists. When he fought Godzilla, he took a beating. When he fought Kong, he took a beating, and if it weren't for the Titan and Shimo having to protect him all the time, he would have lost that fight. And I'll tell you more. As explained in the movie, Godzilla fought against Skar King and his army, also against Shimo, millions of years ago, and imprisoned them in a place they can't escape from. However, at that time, Skar already controlled Shimo through pain. So if at that time Skar hadn't controlled the Titan and Shimo, it's very likely that he wouldn't even be alive by the time of the events of Godzilla x Kong. Godzilla would have already finished him off, because he was extremely weaker than all the others. He didn't pose much of a threat, and as soon as he lost his special weapon to control Shimo, he was defeated in less than a minute afterwards. So Skar King's threat was very small and was even disappointing. 4. Titanus Shimo. I didn't want to put Titanus Shimo on this list because, since her first appearance, it was clear that she didn't want to fight. She is a very docile Titan, not evil, so she doesn't fit very well as a villain, but since she had to be forced to fight throughout the entire movie, controlled by Skar, we have to include her on this list. She is a case that I had to explain right at the beginning of the movie. If we were to consider her potential, what she has already done, and what she could do, she would be number 1. She would definitely be the absolute number 1. Because she is a kaiju that has the ability to cause an ice age on Earth, to freeze gravity, to freeze the sea and stand on top of it. The biggest living kaiju we've seen in the Monsterverse so far. She has everything to be the strongest of all, but that's not what we saw. What we saw was a very scared kaiju, being hurt all the time, who didn't want to fight, and in the end, she looked like a Pokemon being used by Skar and in the end being used by Kong. So Shimo also really disappointed because she didn't have much charisma, didn't have many feats. It was more talk than action, and we didn't see much of Titanus Shimo in the movie. 3. Mutos. That's right, in 3rd place are the male and female Mutos from Godzilla 2014, and I know that right now you must think I'm crazy and that I don't understand anything about the Monsterverse, but as I explained earlier in the criteria, it's about the threat they posed to the Monsterverse and how difficult it was for Kong or Godzilla to defeat these villains. It was extremely difficult for Godzilla to defeat them. We see that Godzilla was extremely exhausted after the battle. He took quite a beating from both of them but managed to win alone, with a little help from humans as well, and right after that battle, he fell asleep right there in San Francisco. It was only after a few hours that he woke up and returned to his home. So that was the first kaiju threat that really appeared to the whole world, and Godzilla, not being in his strongest form yet, had difficulties facing them, but he managed. So the Mutos are in 3rd place for the way they were presented to us, for the difficulty the protagonist had in defeating them, and for the threat they posed to the Monsterverse. It was the first major kaiju threat that was shown to the world. 2. King Ghidorah. It was King Ghidorah who really brought a new empire to the Monsterverse. What an insane kaiju. What a powerful kaiju. One of the kaijus that caused the most trouble in the Monsterverse. Definitely the most threatening so far. A gigantic three-headed dragon wanting to destroy the world. That's totally insane. It took Godzilla, a nuclear warhead, to boost Godzilla's powers even more. Mothra, humans helping, called Orca. It practically needed an army to defeat King Ghidorah, and it was almost defeated. There are also some discussions about who would win in the water, who would win in such a biome, but let's consider what we saw on the screen, and what we saw on the screen was an insane, frightening, terrifying, extremely powerful monster, and Godzilla almost didn't beat this guy, but luckily, he did. So King Ghidorah is in second place, and he's only in second because the first one is the most powerful of all. To this day, I haven't seen any kaiju that would be able to defeat him, except for Titana Shimo, but let's overlook that for now. 1. Mechagodzilla. It's obvious that this machine, with the consciousness of King Ghidorah, would be the most powerful villain in the Monsterverse. There is no doubt about it. Just imagine Mechagodzilla versus any other villain on this list. Think about Mechagodzilla versus Skar King. Honestly, who do you think would win? The only one who would have a slight chance of winning would be Titana Shimo with her freezing breath, and even then, because we saw that not even a powerful atomic breath from Godzilla could beat Mechagodzilla's atomic breath. It took Godzilla and Kong teaming up, and even then, they couldn't defeat Mechagodzilla. This is the most powerful villain that has ever existed in the Monsterverse, and it will be very difficult for anyone to surpass him, if it weren't for Madison and Bernie's help too. Cause a malfunction in the system and stop Mechagodzilla's operation, it wouldn't have worked. Godzilla and Kong would have lost, and humanity would have been wiped out by Mechagodzilla until the energy of the Hollow Earth ran out inside him. So Mechagodzilla was the most difficult villain, the biggest threat, and the most powerful among all the other villains that have appeared in the Monsterverse. I want to know if I'm crazy or if this list really makes sense. Comment below if you agree or disagree with this list and who you would change places, and of course, subscribe to the channel with the bell activated, because that way you help me make the videos reach you, because when you're not subscribed, you miss out on the news. You have to search for them, and here, I like to bring the news to you, so subscribe, with the bell activated, and see you later, alligator.